The ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine has prompted the European Union and the United States to impose stringent sanctions on Russia, particularly targeting financial institutions like Gazprom Bank. While the goal of these sanctions is to penalize Moscow, they have unintended consequences for the European Union, threatening its energy security and economic stability. Recent negotiations between the EU and the US to ease these sanctions underline the severity of Europe's energy crisis and the delicate balance between political goals and economic needs. Energy supply disruptions are a key issue. Gazprom Bank plays a critical role in facilitating Russia's natural gas exports to Europe, and US sanctions on the bank have raised concerns about the reliability of Russian gas supplies. Although President Vladimir Putin has permitted foreign buyers to use alternative banks, legal and financial uncertainties persist, leaving European energy companies and governments struggling to maintain a steady gas flow while adhering to sanctions. The economic impact on the EU is significant. Energy is a vital component of EU imports, and any disruption or increase in costs leads to higher production expenses for industries, rising consumer prices, and overall economic strain. Europe's reliance on energy-intensive industries means that supply instability could result in reduced industrial output, job losses, and slower economic growth. Additionally, sourcing alternative energy such as liquefied natural gas, LNG, from the US is typically more expensive than Russian pipeline gas, and these higher costs are passed on to businesses and consumers, exacerbating inflationary pressures. Increased energy costs also reduce disposable income for households, which dampens consumer spending and further impacts the broader economy. The sanctions on Gazprom Bank have also created significant uncertainty in the financial sector. European banks are cautious about conducting transactions involving Gazprom Bank for fear of violating US sanctions, which has led to a constrained financial environment for energy deals. This hesitation can deter investment in energy infrastructure and delay alternative energy projects, further prolonging the energy crisis. Additionally, the legal complexities surrounding payment methods, such as using Luxembourg-based subsidiaries or other alternative channels, add more uncertainty. Financial institutions must navigate these challenges carefully to avoid penalties, slowing transactions and disrupting the energy market's functioning. In response to the growing energy crisis, the EU and the US are re-evaluating their strict sanctions policies. Acknowledging that the ongoing sanctions on Gazprom Bank threaten energy security and economic stability, policymakers are exploring ways to relax or adjust these measures. Possible strategies include allowing payments through alternative channels or subsidiaries to reduce financial friction in gas transactions, without completely lifting the sanctions. This approach reflects a pragmatic understanding that political and economic goals must be balanced. While the EU and the US remain committed to holding Russia accountable for its actions in Ukraine, the urgent need for reliable and affordable energy supplies in Europe calls for a more flexible strategy. This balance highlights the intricate relationship between energy policy, economic health, and geopolitical strategy. As the new cold season sets in, the EU faces additional challenges. Northwest Europe is bracing for temperatures to drop below typical seasonal levels, putting pressure on energy systems. Gas storage is being depleted quickly, especially after a mild period. As colder weather approaches, and nations like Germany and France experience an increased demand for heating. At the same time, low wind activity has reduced renewable energy output, leading to a higher reliance on gas for electricity production. These supply and demand pressures have caused gas prices to surge by roughly 50% this year. With European countries, especially those dependent on Russian gas, navigating this complex energy landscape, the EU faces an uphill battle as US sanctions on Gazprom Bank are set to take effect on December 20th. Script, revised version. These sanctions, designed to sever the flow of funds to Russia's military initiatives, have created considerable obstacles for nations such as Slovakia, Hungary, and Austria. These countries are dependent on long-term agreements with Gazprom. The new restrictions disrupt the payment infrastructure and could further destabilize energy provisions across the European continent. In this video, we will delve into Russia's ongoing conflicts with several European nations, its choice to suspend gas exports to them, and the newly imposed US sanctions on Gazprom. These restrictions might lead to a complete cutoff of Russia's natural gas supply to Europe. We will analyze this development thoroughly and explore its potential consequences on Europe, which is bracing for one of the coldest winters in recent years. Hungary's response to the energy crisis. Hungary has raised alarms about possible interruptions in gas deliveries via Ukraine, a crucial transit route. Meanwhile, Slovakia is looking for alternative strategies to maintain a steady supply. Austria, under additional strain after OMV suspended payments to Gazprom, is also seeking ways to adapt. Turkey, another key player in distributing Russian gas through the Turk Stream pipeline, is negotiating with the US for exemptions to keep using Gazprom Bank for transactions related to European gas. With gas futures at their highest in a year, many countries are considering alternative solutions, such as rerouting payments through sanctioned Russian banks or obtaining special licenses from the US Office of Foreign Assets Control, OFAC, to facilitate energy-related transactions. These proposed measures include granting waivers to specific clients or renegotiating contracts with Gazprom. However, such moves could lead to prolonged disputes and shift the EU-Russia energy dynamics. Shifting EU-Russia energy relations. The Russia-Ukraine war, which erupted in February 2022, has heavily strained the EU-Russia energy relationship. Russia, once supplying nearly 40% of the EU's gas, saw its role significantly diminish following sanctions and accusations of using energy as a political tool. The Nord Stream pipeline saw major reductions, eventually leading to its shutdown. Countries that refused to meet Russia's demand for payments in rubles faced halted gas deliveries. In response, the EU has rapidly pursued diversification of its energy sources, increasing LNG imports from the US and Qatar, while investing heavily in renewable energy projects. This shift, combined with market volatility, led to a sharp surge in gas prices, peaking at over 300 EUR per megawatt hour in 2022. Inflation followed suit, burdening households and industries alike. As current market conditions and geopolitical effects as of November 22, 2024, European natural gas prices have risen sharply due to mounting geopolitical tensions. The benchmark Dutch Tidal Transfer Facility, TTF, futures increased by 2.61% to 468.6 EUR per megawatt hour, driven by concerns over potential disruptions in supply. These events coincide with Ukraine's missile deployments against Russian targets and the looming expiration of the Russia-Ukraine gas transit agreement, which could further strain supply lines. The UK's energy regulator, Ofgem, recently announced a 21% increase in the energy price cap, reflecting higher wholesale gas costs resulting from political instability and harsh weather conditions. This hike pushes the average annual household energy bill to 1,738 GBP, highlighting the broader impact on European consumers. If you've enjoyed this video so far, could we kindly ask for a small favor? Clicking the like button helps us reach a wider audience, and sharing your thoughts or feedback in the comments has an even greater impact. Thanks for watching, and let's continue. Energy trade between Russia and Europe began in earnest after World War II, during the Cold War, in the late 1960s, with Austria pioneering Soviet gas imports. The Druzhba pipeline, which has been operational since 1964, was one of the earliest major routes supplying oil to Eastern Bloc allies. In the early 1980s, the US under President Reagan expressed concerns over Europe's increasing dependence on Soviet energy, fearing it would enhance the USSR's influence in the West. Despite these concerns, the completion of the Urengoy-Pomorye-Uzhgorod pipeline between 1982 and 1984 led to a substantial increase in Russian gas exports to Western Europe. By the late 1980s, Soviet gas had become a significant part of energy consumption in countries like Germany and France. Despite US attempts to halt pipeline construction by restricting the sale of necessary parts and supplies, the pipelines were finished, and Russia's role as a key energy supplier to Europe grew substantially. Post-Soviet era. Expansion and challenges. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, energy trade between Russia and Europe expanded under frameworks like the 1994 Partnership and Cooperation Agreement. This agreement sought to strengthen political and economic freedom, promote international peace, and foster economic collaboration between the EU and Russia. By 2005, energy had become the cornerstone of EU-Russia trade, with total trade between the two reaching more than 166 billion EUR. Russia's trade surplus represented around 8% of its GDP, approximately 50 billion a year. By then, Russia had become the EU's third-largest trading partner, accounting for 7.3% of the EU's total trade. However, with ongoing geopolitical tensions and the imposition of sanctions, the future of this relationship remains uncertain. Historically, the European Union, EU, was Russia's most significant trading partner, accounting for 52.9% of Russia's trade. The economic structures of both regions were highly complementary, particularly in the energy sector. Energy-related trade constituted a substantial portion of the EU's imports from Russia, making up around 65% of the total. The EU relied heavily on Russian energy supplies, with approximately 28% of the EU's energy needs being met by Russia. In some European countries, this dependency was even greater, with certain nations importing up to 100% of their natural gas from Russia. However, The Ukraine crisis of 2014, marked by Russia's annexation of Crimea, acted as a pivotal turning point in the EU-Russia energy relations. This geopolitical event led to the imposition of stringent sanctions by the EU, targeting critical sectors of the Russian economy, including energy, finance, and defense. These sanctions were designed to limit Russia's access to European markets and technology, which had previously facilitated deep-rooted energy collaborations. EU sanctions on Russia included several key measures, such as prohibitions on imports from Crimea, restrictions on investments and tourism to the region, bans on the export of certain energy-related equipment and technology to Russia, especially targeting oil exploration technologies. The objective of these sanctions was clear: to undermine Russia's ability to explore and develop new oil resources, particularly in difficult-to-access regions such as the Arctic, deep-water fields, and shale projects. In response to these Western sanctions, Russia took strategic steps to diversify its energy export markets. A key element of this strategy was increasing energy exports to China and other Asian nations, allowing Russia to pivot away from its dependency on the European market. By focusing on new markets, Russia sought to establish alternative revenue streams, thereby reducing the economic pressure from European sanctions. The economic consequences of these sanctions were significant. By 2015, EU-Russia trade had substantially declined, particularly in the energy sector. EU imports from Russia dropped notably, reflecting the reduced flow of energy products into the bloc, as well as the broader economic impact of the sanctions. This decline in trade prompted the EU to intensify its efforts to diversify energy sources, a move aimed at enhancing energy security and decreasing reliance on Russian energy supplies. These efforts included increased imports of liquefied natural gas, LNG, from alternative suppliers like the United States and Qatar, investments in renewable energy projects across the EU to reduce overall reliance on fossil fuels, development of new infrastructure for importing energy from alternative sources, thereby enhancing energy resilience. By the years 2022-2024, the situation escalated further due to the ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict. This period witnessed the imposition of unprecedented sanctions, which further disrupted the EU's energy trade with Russia. Between the first quarter of 2022 and the third quarter of 2024, EU imports from Russia plummeted by a staggering 86%. In particular, petroleum oil imports dropped dramatically, falling to just 7% of their volume in the first quarter of 2021. This sharp contraction in energy imports has had a profound impact on the EU's trade balance with Russia. By the second quarter of 2022, the EU's trade deficit with Russia peaked at an astounding 46 billion euros, reflecting the sudden collapse in imports. However, by the third quarter of 2024, this trade deficit had significantly narrowed, dropping to just 0.6 billion euros. This dramatic shift underscores both the success of the EU's diversification efforts and the long-term consequences of the ongoing sanctions on Russia's economy. In conclusion, the evolution of EU-Russia energy relations has been marked by geopolitical tensions, the imposition of sanctions, and a strategic shift towards diversifying energy sources. As the conflict with Ukraine continues, both Russia and the EU are reshaping their energy and trade strategies in response to shifting political and economic realities. Austria's energy crisis and Europe's struggle for stability. Austria, a nation historically tied to Russian natural gas imports, finds itself at the epicenter of Europe's energy crisis. OMVAG, one of Austria's major energy players, announced that Gazprom, Russia's state-owned energy giant, had halted deliveries due to unresolved arbitration disputes. This disruption has sent European gas prices soaring by 2.7%, highlighting the region's vulnerability and underscoring the urgent need for alternative energy sources. The impending winter crisis. Across Europe, as Europe braces for what could be the coldest winter since the onset of the Ukraine conflict, energy supplies face mounting pressure. Reduced Russian gas imports, coupled with fluctuating weather patterns, have heightened concerns over the continent's ability to meet heating demands. Meteorologists warn that temperatures, while slightly above long-term averages, will be much colder than in recent years, significantly straining Europe's already overtaxed energy infrastructure. Germany's energy challenges. Germany, Europe's largest energy market, is expected to face an intense heating season. The country is forecasted to experience a higher-than-average number of heating degree days, HDD, with a forecast increase of 3 days compared to the 10-year seasonal norm. This rise will intensify pressure on both energy supplies and infrastructure as demand for heating rises across Germany's residential and industrial sectors. Cold weather spreads across major European cities. The energy crisis isn't limited to Germany. Other major European cities are preparing for similarly harsh conditions. Paris is expected to experience a dramatic temperature drop to 0 degrees Celsius on December 10th, a full 5 degrees Celsius below the 30-year average. This temperature plunge will significantly increase the city's energy demand. Similarly, Zurich will see temperatures plummet to 8 degrees Celsius on December 11th, which is a staggering 9 degrees below the norm, further placing pressure on the local energy grid. Energy supply. Strain in the global LNG market. As temperatures fall, the interruption of Russian gas supplies has left European countries scrambling to secure alternative sources. Liquefied natural gas, LNG, imports from the United States, Qatar, and Norway have risen in importance. But the logistical challenges and high costs associated with LNG have strained national budgets. These supply disruptions have further complicated Europe's energy crisis, highlighting the urgent need for diversification and energy resilience. The impact of sanctions and the end of Russian gas transits. The U.S. sanctions on Gazprom Bank, a key financial institution facilitating Russian gas transactions, combined with Russia's decision to cease gas deliveries, have drastically reshaped Europe's energy dynamics. Historically, Russia supplied around 40% of Europe's natural gas imports. The termination of these supplies has left a massive void in Europe's energy market, sending shockwaves through global energy prices. In 2022, the price of natural gas in European markets surged to over $300 per megawatt-hour from $1 in 2020, causing major economic disruptions. The skyrocketing prices have hit industries like steel manufacturing and chemicals, curbing production and making them less competitive globally. At the same time, households have felt the pinch, with energy bills doubling in many EU nations compared to pre-crisis levels. While governments have introduced subsidies and price caps to alleviate the burden, these measures are pushing national budgets to the brink. Winter supply risks and the looming threat of blackouts. As the winter season progresses, concerns about energy shortages continue to grow. Reduced gas storage levels, despite concerted efforts to refill reserves, leave many EU countries vulnerable to rolling blackouts or energy rationing. Germany, for example, has resorted to reopening coal plants and delaying the shutdown of its last nuclear reactors to ensure energy security. The expiration of the Russia-Ukraine gas transit agreement. One of the looming threats to Europe's energy stability is the expiration of the Russia-Ukraine gas transit agreement at the end of 2024. This agreement currently allows Russia to send approximately 40 billion cubic meters of gas annually to Europe through Ukraine. If the deal ends, Europe could lose a critical gas supply route, further exacerbating supply issues, particularly in Central and Eastern Europe. Even if the agreement is extended, Ukraine's energy infrastructure, already under strain due to the ongoing war, may struggle to maintain reliable transit capacity. The path ahead: energy transition and sustainability. The combination of sanctions, supply constraints, and geopolitical uncertainty underscores the urgency of transitioning to a more diversified and resilient energy system. However, achieving this goal won't be easy. Europe must balance its immediate energy needs with its long-term sustainability targets, a challenge made even more complex by the ongoing crisis. The energy crisis is a stark reminder of Europe's dependence on external energy sources and the vulnerabilities inherent in this system. As the continent continues to navigate these turbulent waters, the urgency for securing reliable, sustainable, and diversified energy solutions has never been clearer. Thank you for watching this video. If you found it informative or inspiring, please consider liking and subscribing to our channel. Your support means a lot to us. For more content, feel free to check out another video from our channel, displayed on the screen now.